Hey guys, and welcome back to another Pro Guides Teamfight Tactics video. Today, we're going to be helping you improve your game by bringing you the top 10 ways to improve at TFT. This will include things from general tricks for beginners or intermediate players looking to reach the higher tiers, all the way to tips for more seasoned players who are trying to climb but can't get past their block. So regardless of your skill level, there will be tips for you. But first, I'd like to remind you to click on the link below and take a look at the updated ProGuides.com if you want to learn more about Teamfight Tactics. Pro Guides will always have info on the newest patches, best builds, and strategies. There are all kinds of different resources from top players to help you be the best player you can be, so be sure to check out ProGuides.com using the link in the description. Now, let's get right back into the video. So you've just started playing TFT and you decided that you want to start climbing ranked. Or you've been climbing ranked since release, but you just haven't been able to get past gold. Well, we have good news for you. Today, Pro Guides is bringing you the top 10 ways to improve. So let's go ahead and jump right in. 1. Learn the hotkeys. Just like in any other game, TFT has a lot of keyboard hotkeys that can save you so much time that you would otherwise spend on clicking and dragging champs. This tip is mostly for newer players, but you would be surprised how many players have been playing since release and still don't know about these hotkeys. If you're a new player, I would suggest learning them as soon as possible before getting used to playing without using the hotkeys. If you've already been playing without them, I suggest you start using them, as the time you save can be used for things like scouting other boards. Here are the most essential hotkeys as they're set up by default. E. Hover over a champion and press E to sell it. D. Re-roll the champs in your shop. F. Buy experience. 1 and 3. See the next counterclockwise or clockwise board. Spacebar. Return the camera to the board your little legend is on. You can even use most of these hotkeys while you're in the carousel. The selling hotkey can be particularly useful for selling champs to gain your interest while you're away at the carousel, or selling a champion that you don't want to combine when you pick up another copy at the carousel. 2. Play a lot of games. This may seem like an obvious tip, but the absolute best way to improve at TFT, or any game, is to play as many games as you can. One of the first things you can ask any player who tells you they are trying to improve is, how many games or how often do you play? A lot of times people admit that they haven't actually played too much, or will say something like they watch a lot. Usually people will avoid playing ranked games because of a ranked anxiety, or they just don't want to play until they know enough to not lose. However, the best way to learn the game, the meta, and what works for you specifically is to actually play the game. This is also the best way to grow comfortable with all the basics of the game. Ultimately, your goal in your first few games while learning should be to make sure that you're actually getting a hold of the basics so that you'll never have to worry about them again. By the time you're done learning the basics, you can focus solely on the decision-making that goes into winning the game and not having to worry about things like what item combinations make what items. 3. Learn how champs and items interact. This is a little bit of a continuation from tip 2. One thing you should learn and pay attention to while playing all your games is how all champs interact in battles. You should know where your champs will target and where your champs will move the moment your opponent's comps load in across from you. This will make it easier when scouting, as you'll understand where you should be positioning your team. Another thing you should learn pretty quickly is how items combine and interact. When you're starting out, it's okay to use a cheat sheet to figure out how to build specific items, but it's important that you learn how to build those items and commit it to memory. That way you don't have to spend time looking up combinations and can focus on things like positioning and scouting. You might have noticed that a lot of these tips are about saving time and making things second nature. That's because it is one of the most important tips. So I'll say it one more time. Play a lot of games so you feel comfortable with the basics and can focus on your game specifically. You should also know what items are good on what champions and what items stack or work well together. Aside from obvious bad choices like Rabadon's on a Kassadin, some items just aren't as efficient on some champions as they are on others. For example, if you have a Guinsoo's and a Tristana and Lucian, who would it be better to place it on? With enough experience, you'll learn that Lucian tends to spend more time dashing than actually firing, and also manages to dash into danger and die. He wouldn't be able to stack as well as Tristana would, so Tristana would use it much more efficiently. 4. Watch other good players. Another tip is to watch other good players. This can be streamers, higher ranked friends, or anything like that, but the idea is to learn from players who have figured out the game well enough that they were able to make the climb. Every player has their own playstyle and different ideas of what works and what doesn't. If you're stuck at your rank and you're looking for ways to improve, it'd be a good idea to take a look at things from a different perspective. Maybe other people are thinking about certain items and comps differently than you are. Maybe other people are positioning around certain champs or abilities in ways that you never would have thought of. These are all things that you wouldn't get if you just stayed inside your box. 5. Don't be afraid to buy champs that you don't need or sell upgraded champs. One question a lot of new players ask is, why do other players buy every champ that shows up, even if it doesn't fit their comp? This gives you more options when you're trying to transition, denies champs from your opponents, and can increase your chances of seeing what you're looking for in the shop. In general, it's a good idea to buy what you can if you have the extra gold and won't have to give up your interest. On the other hand, one mistake a lot of new players make is not selling a champ because they invested so much in upgrading it or because it was carrying them in the early game. It's important to recognize when a champ is falling off and start moving on to other champs. For example, if you have a 3-star Tristana in the early game, but you move into Sorcerers in the mid game, there's not really any reason to keep Tristana, so even though it's 3-star, you shouldn't be afraid to sell it. 6. Avoid tilting. This one is also kind of obvious and isn't really an easy one to do, but this is a very important one. Most of the problems players face are entirely mental. They can go on a loss streak and carry that into their next game, which only results in more losses. It's a good idea to take an occasional break when playing a lot of games, whether you're winning or losing. When you're winning a lot of games and you start to lose, you might feel like it was just one bad game and keep playing and losing, thinking you'll go on another win streak and earn it back. Or you might lose a lot of games and think you'll eventually win and turn it around. Either way, there's a point where you should have stopped. Another way people start to tilt is they can feel like they have nothing but bad luck. One important thing to remember when thinking about this is that variance happens, and while you might have been unlucky in that moment, there were probably just as many lucky moments that you didn't acknowledge. At its core, TFT is basically just like a deck-building card game. This is probably why many of the top players are former card game players, specifically from Hearthstone. They are used to the high amounts of RNG and the inherent luck that comes with card draw, but they also have just as much experience with playing in a way that minimizes the impact of bad RNG. 7. Scout other players' boards. This is an important tip that you've probably heard multiple times from multiple different people, including us in past videos. But it's important enough to say it again. Scouting other players' boards is a good way to know what comps you're going to go up against, knowing how many or what champs are available, or to figure out how you should be positioning. The more you scout, the more you'll get used to it, and you'll know where you should be looking and what you should be looking for. Eventually, you'll be able to quickly cycle and flash through other boards and have a good idea of what you need to change. 8. Pay attention to your positioning. Continuing from the last tip, pay attention to your positioning. After you've scouted your opponents, be sure to use that information. Adjust your board accordingly, make sure your carries are in a position where they'll be safe to do a lot of damage, and if you have anything like Kassadin, make sure it's in a position to counter a good target. Positioning can play a huge part in how a fight plays out. It's entirely possible that one team can go up against another team, lose, reposition, and then beat that exact same team. That's why it's also important that you pay attention to not only your opponent's boards, but also pay attention to your fights and recognize where most of the damage you're taking is coming from, and which your units are underperforming. For a little more in-depth explanation about general positioning, be sure to check out our positioning guide. 9. Plan ahead. When you're buying champs or planning a comp, be sure to think ahead. Don't just think of the game in that moment. Instead, think of how the champ is going to fit into your final comp. You can always buy a single champ and resell it for the same price, but once you start to invest by leveling it up, you're going to lose out on some gold when you resell it, unless it's a level 2 1-cost champ. That's why it's important to consider how a champion fits into your final comp. It may not seem like a lot, but if you do this over and over again, you're actually just throwing away gold. Now, this doesn't mean that you should never invest in a champ that you're eventually going to resell. Maybe you're going to use it to stay strong and keep your win streak going. In that case, the extra gold you made from winning pays for the gold you lose by reselling an upgraded champ. But it's important that you plan that upgrade out and think about why you're doing it. 10. Be flexible. Always be willing to adjust your plans. You shouldn't be too hard set on making a single comp or strat work in any game, let alone across every game. If you're not getting champs or items to make a comp work, be sure to switch it up. Additionally, a mistake a lot of newer players make is assuming that TFT is a game where certain comps are just winning comps. They'll watch a pro player run a certain comp, see the results, and only try to force that comp every time. Afterwards, they wonder why it doesn't work out the same way for them. But there are a lot of different factors that come into play when trying to make a comp work. The team comps you're playing against in your game might be different from what the other player went against, or maybe you weren't able to get the comp online early enough in the game. Instead, you should be willing to try different things in order to figure out what can work for you. It's also important to be flexible because TFT is a game where it just might not even be possible to run a specific comp if you wanted to. This can be because too many other people are running the comp, or you just don't even see the champs you need. In these cases, you'll need to be willing or able to swap another comp. This is where tip number 5 comes in. It's a good idea to have extra champs as a backup in case your first plan falls through. And with that, there are your top 10 ways to improve at TFT. What do you guys think of the tips and tricks? Do you know of any other tricks to improve? Be sure to comment all of them down below. But if you focus on improving these skills and use these tricks, you will definitely start to see progress. Just remember, it's a process, but if you keep at it, you'll eventually reach your ELO goal. If you still have any questions, be sure to ask in the comments below. Also, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit ProGuides.com to stay up to date on teamfight tactics. Good luck in your games, and we'll see you all next time.